Yeah, I like Pathways. I mean, I think we all have a deep affection for it because it was our first successful product. But I realized that I mean, we did so much better with Marathon right now, and Marathon so much outclasses Pathways on faster machines. On slower machines, I think Pathways is definitely better. I don't know. I think all of us have we love Pathways, but it's not. We don't want to go play it anymore. We're sick of it. We had to play it, 12 hours a day, 4 hours, 12 hours a day for 4 days in a row at all the trade shows, and we all played it through probably 4 or 5 times in the beginning, and I think we're all pretty tired of it. But it's a great game. It launched the company, so we like it. There were several. If you're talking about the programming, there were several problems, including the networking, getting good speed out of the rendering and the texture mapping. There were several parts of Marathon that for a while I didn't think they were impossible, but I thought they were. I was willing to believe that I was not going to be able to solve them in any reasonable amount of time. And as it turned out, it all got solved, and that's just what happens when you're working on it. When you're spending 14 hours a day on a project you're throwing yourself into, you believe it's impossible half the time. I think you have to. But yeah, stuff like the texture mapping, getting the rendering engine to run fast without bugs. There was a full rewrite of the rendering engine in, I think it was right after we got back from Macworld, where absolutely nothing remained of the front end of the renderer. The engine that takes the 3D wireframe of the world and generates enough information to pass it to the texture mapping code to map it. All of that got replaced in about a week, and until that happened, I didn't think that was going to be very easy. So there were a lot of development problems that were difficult, and you can see it in the game. I mean, anybody that knows anything about programming can look at the game and say, that's pretty hard. And it is, but it's all solvable if you spend enough time working on it. Well, somebody different did the art, which means it's a different style. But I agree with you that the art is better. In Pathways, we used different techniques, and we were sort of going for a different look. Pathways is much more cartoonish. The monsters are very, fantastic and ridiculous. And in Marathon, we tried to go a little bit more for realism. And in the projects we work on next, I think we're going to be going even farther towards that. Marathon still has a lot of the cartoonish elements of Pathways. You can tell sometimes that the figures were hand drawn. They're, it doesn't look as real as it could. But basically, it was just a different person, a different style, and some different goals. When Reg was working on the art, I was helping him to make it not look like Pathways as much as possible. No, we're not going to release the tools that we wrote to develop Marathon, and there are reasons for that I won't go into. I'm helping people right now, several people on the internet, work on level editors. I'm giving them, code and help. Right now, I'm actually more interested in the physics model, which nobody's written an editor for, and is really cool. And in the short term, more interesting than the level editor. But I'm doing my best to get a level editor out in the public domain. So call me up.
No, email.
Yeah, don't call me. Email me. I'm not gonna comment on what it says about our society. I think what's appealing about games like this is that anybody can sit down and see the gun being held out in front of their face and see the guys running around in the world, and it doesn't look just like the real world, but it's a metaphor that they can easily understand. They can say, oh, okay, I can shoot that guy, right? And they shoot him and he dies, and then they're into it. And it takes like 3 seconds for most people to figure out what the game is about and get into it. So it has an enormously wide appeal. And it's the 3D, you're running down the corridors. It's it's easy to get into. I mean, you see people dodging, projectiles in real life all the time. I think that's the big point. It's much different than a game like, a flight sim that takes more time to get into, or a side-scrolling arcade game that's much more, much more Nintendo-ish. A lot of people don't get into that. A lot of people that aren't into computer games don't get into those games. But the first-person texture map games are very, you can identify with them real easily. And I won't get into the violence aspect of them. Everybody almost loves violence, so. There's some networking stuff that we didn't get to at the end because we realized we had to finish the solo game. And I should say that we didn't play net for the last probably 4 months in Marathon development. There's a lot of net stuff. There's network games. We wanted to have games like, Tag, King of the Hill, stuff like that. Those would have been really fun. Designate one guy as it, and you only get points for killing him. So everybody's trying to kill this one guy, and all he gets points for is escaping for a certain amount of time. King of the Hill, where there's there's some big pedestal in the middle of some room, and if you spend the longest time in a 10-minute game on top of that pedestal, you win. Stuff like that. That would be pretty cool. Some of the writing was rougher than we would have liked. The story didn't progress in a couple parts as well as we would have liked. And some of the maps definitely, especially in the beginning, were just not... We learned so much in the later stages of using the map editor that we really wanted to go back and change some of the first maps, but if there was no way to do that as far as time went. And then the art. We are going to pay a lot more attention to the art in the second game, because we know it can be improved. We can get better textures, stuff like that. We're going to be moving to 16-bit graphics, 16-bit source art, not just 16-bit on the screen like Marathon does. Actually, 16 and 24-bit. There are a lot of things. I mean, there's a huge list of stuff that I just absolutely hate in Marathon that works pretty well, but I want to change.
So is this a sequel going to be called Marathon 2 or
I'm not going to talk about a sequel right now. I think my favorite smartass comment is anybody that looks at what we're doing and thinks about what they would do in our shoes can probably figure out what's going to happen. But especially with our experience shipping Marathon late, I'm not going to talk about future releases, especially this early, and probably not even our PR guy is going to talk about the future releases even a month before we ship them. Everybody knows we definitely had a bad experience with Marathon, and that was largely our fault. The whole history of Marathon was, we're going to ship next month, right? Okay, yeah, and then it didn't work. So we're going to try to get away from that and just make things less public in the beginning.